This course is not about you building a specific effect. You won't come out of this course and have like those 10 perfectly polished effects which you just kind of post on ArtStation. It is a very different approach to a course. So, in the introduction, this is pretty much what I just did. I'm going to talk in a bit more focused way about why I made this course and all the individual things which can be important. Then we're also going to talk about over and under scoping and how to work with those in general, and not just for production, but also for your own personal development. We then gonna jump over a couple of other topics, and over and under scoping, we're gonna talk about messy productions. This is a bit more based on if you actually already work on a game in a company, but it can be transferred a bit more to personal projects as well. But I think this is actually more of like the production professional part. We're also gonna talk about missing improvements. There's a lot of people who work with game development and maybe even VFX specifically since a pretty long time and either stopped improving, getting your first job, and you're, well, kind of confused and scared about what you're gonna do and how you actually will work with team members, how you should approach certain things, and how to work with the initial feel of you really do not belong there. So, after going through all those common issues, we will jump to the tools and references. And what this is going to be is we're going to talk about how to plan out effects or tasks in general, and what kind of tools are usually used in a production for this. So I selected 4 different tools. I'm going to talk about them a bit. And it is not really a tutorial about the individual programs. It's more like, what do they do? Why they might be good for you? Which one you should look into? And just a general little kick of like, yeah, this exists. You can use it. And it might be really useful for you. Then we want to continue going to references. And this is kind of a selection of the most common websites and ways where me and a lot of other people as well in the team use websites to just, well, get references, get them from games, get them from individual posts. So it is quite hard at the start, especially, but even over a longer time to find reliable resources for references in game VFX. So I decided on 6 different ones where you might know the most obvious ones, but the later ones will be more nichey and nichey. So it's something where it's like, okay, if you do heavily realistic stuff, go to this website. They have great stuff. You can work with this on this level. Semi-stylized is here, fully stylized is here. And just kind of giving you guys an idea of like, yeah, similar to the planning tools, those websites exist, work with them, and I hope they're going to be useful. It's a smaller section, but I hope that a lot of people can then easier find references for their effects, because there are not as many reference websites and stuff compared to like something like movies. But there's still a really good amount, but a lot of them are very, very well hidden, it feels like. And just writing them down hopefully helps a couple of people who didn't know some of them at least. Okay. Then, direction, working with direction. This is a section where we talk a lot about who you're going to work with. When you work in a real production, you will have people above you. Your game director, your design director, your art director. And how do we work with their feedback? How do we work with their vision? It is something which doesn't exist at all when you think about like normal courses or tutorials. You don't work based on somebody's vision. You work on what you want to create or you see in the course, what somebody else came up with, and then you replicate it. But in a real production, that is so far from what's actually happening that this entire section is going to be based on what does an art director do? What does a game director do? How do we work with them to create something nice? How do we understand their vision? And how do we make sure that we also keep the job in the end? And after this, we will jump to the examples. The examples is, like I already explained, based on 4 different courses, which we're gonna create in the course. I'm quickly need to scroll a bit here so I can showcase the additional website, not website, different part of the Miro board so I don't spoiler anything because there's also a lot of other courses here. Yeah, so the theoretical tasks. We're gonna go through 4 different ones, and this is the part where I got the most feedback on, and I needed to redo a lot of stuff a long time. It is based on you working in some capacity in a company. And this is section based on you work as a freelancer for a AAA studio. You work as a full-time VFX artist in an indie studio. You work at an outsourcing studio. You work, also like in a AA company as a full-time artist. So it is pretty much all the possibilities you could drop in as a job apply to one of those examples. We're gonna go over how we do a realistic torch for an environment VFX when you work as a freelancer for a AAA company. We're gonna go through the stylized AOE for an indie team which develops a small little MOBA, working a lot with the concept artists and the character team. Then also a cinematic effect where you work as a kind of freelancer, but like in an outsourcing studio for VFX, and you support on a cutscene for a game trailer. And then the last one is working in the, not really in the UI VFX artist area, but you do a UI effect for a AA team.
And sorry, before you
yes.
move forward, can you zoom in just a bit on the shots for the recording? Like
what
so
can
people can you zoom in on the different effects, basically, so people can see them?
Yes. So I mean, those are not the effects.
Yeah, I know, but like just the examples.
Yeah, obviously. So yeah, we're gonna do a torch. We're gonna do a stylized AOE. We're gonna do a martial arts fighting scene, and then we're also gonna do a UI effect, which is gonna be an ability cooldown effect. I'm gonna showcase one of them, which is maybe the least cool one, but one which is heavily overlooked, and this is the UI effect. So we go into this entire production for this effect in a very different manner. All the other effects are done based on, okay, you work with Unreal, and you have all the possibilities of Unreal's toolkit. This one is different. This one kind of implies that you work as a VFX artist in a AA company which has their own engine. For this own engine context, I created a rule set of what the engine can do and what it can't. This is Unity. Because I didn't want to code my own engine on top, I decided to just go with Unity because it looks differently, it behaves differently, and it makes it a lot easier to cut out a lot of stuff. So there's my own rule set of being, this is the Mad VFX engine. It is old, it is outdated, it can't do a lot of shit. How do we work with this? How do we create effects for it, especially UI VFX? So, how is the entire concept of the examples? I'm gonna go through this now a bit more in detail compared to how I would do that for the other examples. But we're gonna start with this scene. This is the scene after, this is how the entire setup will be done. We're gonna start with the background information. You work as a senior VFX artist for 100 people AA action game company. Your current game is an action RPG done in the company's custom engine, Mad Engine. The art style is semi-realistic. Then we're gonna continue and go through, you get a list of tasks. And the studio is going to come to you, probably the design director or art director or whoever at this point. And he's going to be, we need some cooldown indicator for the main 3 abilities of our player. It should be obvious when a skill is on cooldown and have a big emphasis on the recharge stage of it. So the player always knows if a skill is usable or not. And also make it tweakable easily in case there is new stuff coming in. Then we're going to go through a breakdown. So whatever was written here, maybe in Slack, probably not in Discord, in Teams or wherever, or even said in a meeting, we break this down. What was said here, what does that mean for us? We're talking about a cooldown indicator, so it's a UI effect. Obvious when a skill is on cooldown, so we need a masked out state. Then also a big emphasis on the recharge state, so it has a burst visual as soon as like the ability can be used again. It needs to be something which kind of flashes in your eye on the side, which kind of tells you, okay, you can use this skill again. And then tweakable easily, so exposed parameters and some procedural setups, at least as much as possible. Who do we talk to? We talk to our UX and the game designers. They might already have some prototype ready, and then a general layout with how it should look like. We're going to talk about like the engine limitations. I'm not going to go into all that detail now, but so what can the engine do? We talk to the coders and other people. We found out the Met engine has a quite outdated UI tool set. You can't use any particle systems for UI. It can script some HLSL shaders into the UI easily, and we have a good video playback system. So based on that, we start to break down how do we work with all that. What can we even build in this engine for what was said? Then we're going to work with references, what looks similar, breaking down what was said there and the game's art style, and figuring out what are the important pillars of those kind of effects in other games. We're going to talk about concepts. Do you need one? Don't you need one? If you need one, how do we do it? If we don't need one, how do we work with this otherwise? There is the blockout stage as well. So for each effect, there is going to be kind of a little diagram which goes through, do you need a blockout for this? And it will go through a couple of arrows here, which should make it easier for you guys if you actually learn it on, do I need to create a blockout for this, or should I just not bother and jump right in? And then here also some findings in the end based on the blockout we might create. So what do we need? We need some video files in the end, one which is using a glare, one is using a general aura for the idle effect, and then a rechargeable burst, and then also shaders, a radial progression, and a desaturation controller. Right. Then we talk about testing. How do we get like the first blockout into the engine? How does it get tested from other people? We're going to talk about the first refinement pass. This is when you actually get in your first good looking textures and just overall like a part of the production where you can say, okay, this we can work with for like a year. It looks good enough that if you really don't have any time left at the end, it can be released like this, but you probably should put a bit more time into it. Then we're going to talk about the second testing, which also includes talking to game designers, QA, art and lead director, lead artist and lead director. What the fuck did I say? Art director and art lead. I'm sorry. And then we're going to talk about the polishing state. So the... Mustafa, stop laughing. Very unprofessional of you. So yeah, and then the last quality push and what that involves as well. And I can show you how this is gonna be in the course examples. Every single stage I just talked about will have its dedicated scene in Unity, Unreal, whatever. The UI effect is kind of bare-boned, but we try to work with everything we have. So this is not to build the coolest, most insane thing that exists. We try to build something as good as possible with the tools we have, which most of the time in a production you would actually need to do. So when we start with this, then you will see this is the system which we got handed over by the programmers and the UX designer. So we have those icons here. There's not really anything there yet. If we press Q, W, or E, it also doesn't really do something yet. And just overall, there's not a lot of stuff going on here. Then we go to where's the prototype? So this is the prototype where we will start talking about the shader code, which we wrote. So this is going to be a bit more of, okay, so how do we actually build this thing? And this is a custom HLSL node. And I mainly put that into VFX Graph since it will be a bit easier for you guys to kind of see, you know, what it does. And then you can say, okay, move it a bit around here, change the mask progression. So you just kind of overall see what the shader code will do. We might also open it up at some point. But yeah, so overall, this entire idea of this is like, okay, what do we start with? What is the most important part of the shader or like the functionality? And then we start hooking this up. So there's already like a very base version of the countdown working from the programmers. But now how do we connect something to it? And now if we press Q, W, or E, we have this radial thing kind of revealing something. It's a mask. It's a radial mask we talked about in the course. And then afterwards, we start playing around with a couple more advanced settings. And I'm going to explain how all of this is set up, how you should think about setting this up, and how to move through this entire process as smoothly as possible. Because then we're going to go from prototype to block out. No, this is block out, sorry. To refinement, obviously. There it is. Where we're gonna start getting the icons in when we talk to our concept artists and UI artists too. We're gonna make sure that it also gets a couple of additional tweaks in the new shader. And oh, this is actually the wrong one. It would be the handover. No. It's somewhere here, I swear to God. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so pretty much we're gonna go through all those steps, talking about how to define the pipeline, on how to make the entire idea of, okay, we need to work with video files. So what does that imply? We should probably work with After Effects. So we have an After Effects file. Then we need to learn, now that we used After Effects for this and we have a video file, how can we even play that in our engine? And then learning, okay, our engine can only play this one specific compression format, which is quite normal for video game engines. And how do we convert our typical MP4 format for this, which makes it then actually usable in a final product, because the memory footprint of this video file will be so small that you can use it. So there is still going to be a very good amount of information about like how to do certain effects. But it's not that I'm gonna talk you through every single step of how this effect was done. I'm gonna talk you through the individual steps and what we added and why we added it. Could you rebuild all of that if you know a lot about VFX already and you watch the course? Yes, very likely. But it's not really what the course is made for. And yeah, in the end, we're gonna add additional juice to the effects. So we're gonna make sure that if you press a button, also all of those icons will, will pop and then also glow up, and you're gonna have like the burst coming out, the icon glowing up, then you have the glare again. All of those things just make the effect feel juicy. And this is something which we could iterate on with more feedback from our art director. But for the game this is intended to, this is enough. Like I said, this is not the coolest UI effect ever, but it is something which was built for this production and the stage in production. We have other effects in the examples which are like fully polished and could probably be placed up even in Battlefield 6 right now. Full front on you, Mustafa.
Hey,
So, yeah.
leave me out of it.
Yeah. And when we went through all those different effects, we will go through the next step. And this is going to be the technical pipeline. So let me quickly move this over here so I don't spoil something for the second time. And in the technical pipeline, we're going to talk about a general idea of how do you work with tools, how do you work with budget limitations, as well as how do you even think about all that stuff when you just start working on a project. This is more of a thing which you should think about when you start the production. So if it's your personal project, think about it at the start. If it's a game production, this is something mainly either already somebody figured out for you because you joined late, or if you're early in production, you're responsible to figuring out. So what tools do you need? What is the budget for it? What even is a VFX budget? Since there is a lot of misconception about that. It's not something where we're going to go into insane detail because that is like 3 courses in itself. But what we're going to talk about is the tool flow. So that people kind of understand you don't need to use Houdini, Embergen, then Blender, moving to Substance Designer, then moving back to Maya or Modo, and then doing your Photoshop created textures with an additional filter pass in Substance Designer. It is about like how do you use tools in a real production on an efficient level, that you don't waste time, that you're confident with it, that anybody can come up to you at any point, says, I need this effect, and you know exactly, okay, I need to do this in Blender, this in Substance Designer, and this I'm gonna wrap up then in Houdini, and then it's done. This is for that, like that you can get a good feel about what do you actually need to create any form of effect, and that you also limit yourself in some capabilities, because that's honestly always needed. And a lot of people who start or don't have an insane amount of experience yet tend to just jump onto all the new tools and mix every single program they know to just kind of create something because they want to use all the tools, and you know, like this is a cool feature in this one, and this can do this really well. But if you really work with all those programs very long, you will realize they do exactly the freaking same stuff. And it is more about like getting a rule set of when do I use what. Since you might also work in a company which just straight up only allows you to have like one of those programs. Those are really, really, really expensive for smaller studios. So yeah, then we're gonna talk about like just in general off-limit tech. So figuring out early on production, how big can a flipbook be? What is the textile density in general for VFX textures? Then what kind of file formats or compression formats can I use, and a lot of other things. So we're going to talk about all of that, and we're also going to go through a little example of how I would go about this in most productions nowadays. And this is combined with the last part of this lecture, which is like the tech budget in general. So like I said, way too big of a topic, gigantic. So it's more about like you understanding that this exists. It's super, super important. And the 3 most important terms, what they mean, and to give you just for every single one of those terms, one value which you can kind of keep in mind for at least the average game production nowadays for a PC platform. I'm stressing that a bit because it doesn't really apply at all anymore if you work on a mobile or VR or even some console stuff. But at least it's a starting point for you guys. And then we gonna talk over documentation. What is documentation? Why you should do that? Why you should even maybe do that if you work on a personal project, because it can be super, super useful. And yeah, why do we do documentation? How do you do a handover in general? And well, why should you do a handover? And then a small little section which is simply similar to the other ones, which is like, which program should you use for writing a documentation? This comes down most of the time to what your company is using, but it's if you have the chance to decide yourself, it's cool to know at least the 3 most common ones. And yeah, at the end, before the outro, we're going to talk about how to apply all of that to personal projects. The course is, I would say, 70% tailored towards people who already work in a production. But everything that's in there, you can and should 100% apply to your personal projects, because it is going to help you so much in just learning how to work in a stress-free way on effects. And also we're going to talk a bit about like what kind of person you might be and how you should work with those planning rule sets. And we talk about just a slimmed down version of the production pipeline we talked about in the examples. And then we're also gonna wrap it up with what to do next for you guys. And yeah, this is pretty much the entire course in terms of layout. And yeah, I think it's gonna help a lot of people a lot. But I also really hope that I did a good enough job to, first of all, explain what this course is. You don't do effects. And also to kind of give an insight why it might be really important. I think the main reason why we did the course in the end was simply that we know so many people who, even after like 1.5 years or 2 years of doing VFX and personal projects, have trouble to even think about how to do effects in a real production. Also, who still struggle every single time they start with a new effect with how do I even start again? Like it feels like a lot of people feel like they forgot everything when they do a new effect. It is kind of the idea behind this course to give you the information of how to break out of this tutorial loop. You can do courses. Courses are really, really useful to teach you new stuff. But it is just as important, and honestly even more important, that you learn yourself how to do effects without any normal guidance, without anything else than either you got an idea or you got given a task. And yeah, I think that's probably the most I should say about this without spoiling too much for it. And this course is like a compass. It kind of is. It's meant as a little rule set for you as well, that you might have watched through the course, but after like 1.5 years or something, you're in like a, I don't know, production which doesn't go that well, or you might have forgotten stuff about it, and the course is kind of built up in a way where you can just like immediately jump to like this lecture and this part, and then you can just like even read this stuff on the presentation I wrote, because I didn't really originally want to put so much text on the presentation, and I think it's not too much at this point, but I kind of decided to put more text on it, so it's just easier to kind of use it as kind of almost a form of like documentation. So you forgot about like, okay, how should I work with this kind of behavior or situation? And you just jump in, can pause, can read through it, and you're like, okay, yeah, I heard this before, I kind of understand it. And a lot of the stuff which is talked about in the course, you will know. There is like, it's logical stuff, which is just very nice to hear from other people from time to time, because either you doubt it yourself at some point, or you just yeah, really unsure about a certain situation. And yeah, I think at this point, if there's any kinds of questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything. I know I talked a lot again, which is kind of normal. But yeah, so if there's any question, just kick them in the chat and we're gonna go through anything that you can think about. So far, very clear. Thank you. That's always good to hear that my rambling in the middle did not disturb too many people.
I love how you had to iterate every couple of like, I think like every couple of time you switched. This is not a course building. This is not an effects course build. Sorry, that's why I kept laughing, because every time you would go back and mention that this isn't building the effects, this is the theory behind it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was funny.
In everything we did so far, this was like the biggest question for us is like, we know that this course will help a lot of people, hopefully. But first of all, are people even willing to like watch such a course? Because it's so different. Like I said, like you don't come out of this with an effect. And a lot of people who want to take a course do it because they want to showcase it on their portfolio. So it is something completely different. And it was an insane amount of time effort to even think about all the possible connections, right? So like the examples is like the best, well, example for that, because there was so much information which I needed to just combine. So if I showcase that briefly again, it's like those are the 4 example cases, and every single one goes through different pipelines, through different people you talk to, and also different principles based on like, what is your employment? I needed to talk to people which work in freelance studios for years. I obviously had my own experience in AAA, AA, and all that stuff. But like every company you work at is differently, and you will never be able to go through this and say, okay, this is what it should be or will be for every single production. But I think at this point, we got so much feedback, so many people saying, okay, you should add this and then also think about this. Where I was already here, I needed to rebuild all of the older ones like 3 times again, just to make sure that all the information is in there. So I think at this point, it's kind of at a point where I can say more than 90% of situations you will ever be in with any effect you will need to create, this is how you should approach it. And yeah, so very, very different approach on how to create a course for this. And yeah, 100% started freelancing, joined the studio that disbanded after 2 weeks. Now I'm on the coolest project so far. All right. I mean, that's cool, I guess. But yeah, it's hard. Like coming up with an idea on how to approach all of that, and also you personally thinking about that. Especially, you know, we have this entire section here at the start, your first project. How to think about it, how to interact with other people, how to make sure you just don't feel like shit. And most people which just got their first job will be in this situation. It might not even be like immediately, but as soon as you sign the contract and you're waiting for the project to start, in the first 1-2 weeks, you're always in the situation where you're just like sitting next to your senior or lead and they showcase you anything, and you did so many courses, which that's great, but you have no actual clue, how do I work together with those people? What are half of the words that dude just told me? And now I got my first task. I'm just so scared on executing it. That is really normal. But like, nobody really talks about it, and there is also not really a straightforward answer for that, right? So
Yeah.
it was kind of figuring out a lot of parts about like production, working yourself on it, and there's no way, like I said, this can be for any leads or directors, even just as for any person getting their first job. There's no difference because I learned so much, and I thought I already knew a lot about this stuff when talking to other people, when rewriting this 16 times. It's quite a lot of stuff a lot of people learn over years, and this is a little collection, at least, on this, which you will learn yourself. But it's kind of nice having that early on. I would have been very happy if I would have gotten that before my
Yeah.
first job, or at least during my first job.
Like there
So
isn't a lot of that information out there, especially for when you're starting, and you have to learn that stuff on the go always. Like you have to pick it up when you get started. You have to make sure, like, hey, who do I go talk to for this? Who do I talk to for this? And so on. At least this gives you an example of, hey, I need to go talk to animation for this issue, or I need to go talk to lighting for this issue, and so on. So,
yes,
from that perspective of us doing uh, VFX and being in the industry for quite a long time, we wished, and I'm saying this also for myself, I wished I was taught this before I joined the industry, because it took me at least 5 years to understand even half of the stuff that Bjorn talked about. Because when you get started, sometimes you get tight specialization. So either they throw you into the environment art path where you just do VFX for environment, then basically you don't know the rest of the stuff. So when you get put on something else, like character, combat, or whatever it is, like you absolutely have no idea and you need to start over again. So yeah, this is basically the combination of the collective knowledge of a lot of people put into this.
yeah, exactly. So I think overall, even if not a lot of people would take the course, the people who will take it hopefully get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I think for me personally, our next courses theoretically are cooler. I
Yeah.
fully agree. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that shit is sick, but this one is overall more important.
Yeah.
It is. It's a small course. It is more like a freaking university presentation in the end, with me sitting there with you alone. I I I promise it won't be awkward. And just me talking way too long about everything I did and how you could make it basically better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, like to say, as far as the next courses, we're really excited about what we have in store for you guys. I'm gonna stop the recording